Hi, I'm Matt. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.4 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So subscribe to see where I go next and perhaps get some inspiration for your next trip. So hello and welcome to the video, and welcome to Mexico. This is the second and final instalment of my trip through South and Central America, which started in Colombia with time in Bogota and San Andres. You can find that video here, and in this video I'll be continuing my journey in Mexico City. This trip was built around a redemption of an American Express companion voucher, taking advantage of 2 recent developments. The first being that these can now be used by single travellers who then get a 50% discount on the avios required to travel, and the second being that they can now be used on Iberia and Aer Lingus as well as on British Airways. I'd flown down to Bogota from Madrid with Iberia, but wanted to do something different on the way back, so had spotted that seats were available in first class on BA back from Mexico City. That had allowed me to take maximum advantage of my TUFA by booking a double open jaw itinerary, as it's known, Madrid to Bogota and Mexico City to London, with each leg on a different airline in a different class. Those TUFAs can be great fun to use. I arrived into Mexico City in the early evening, and here's an immediate tip. Desks inside the terminal sell tickets to taxis which you then pick up outside. That's quite a good system, and it takes a fair bit of the stress away from the transfer experience if you're not familiar with the city. The first desk I stopped at quoted 1,200 pesos for the ride to the hotel. I'd researched the price before arrival and was expecting it to cost about 300, so I politely declined, and the very next desk quoted 280. It was outrageous that such a blatant rip-off could be attempted so brazenly inside the terminal. So I paid the 280 pesos, glared at the rip-off merchant at the next desk, and took my ticket outside and joined the queue. And after a shortish wait, a cab arrived to take me into the city. The 30-minute ride cost me around £13. I stayed at the Hotel Catedral, very close to the city's main square, and a very nice property. Breakfast wasn't included in my rate. I'll happily enjoy a hotel's breakfast when it's thrown in, but I'm fine when it's not, as it allows me to get out of the hotel and experience some local places. I think I must have lucked out with the room I was allocated, as it was very spacious with a dedicated work area, a decent bathroom, and amazingly its own patio area with spectacular views across the city. For £56 a night, this was a spectacular room, and I can't believe that this is the standard accommodation that £56 would usually secure. No complaints from me though. The hotel is named after the city's cathedral, which was just around the corner. If massive Catholic places of worship are your thing, this was certainly a massive Catholic place of worship. The cathedral forms one side of the main city square, which is an imposing public space with a very large flag. This was a Sunday, and there was no public access onto the square itself. I don't know whether that was just a Sunday thing, or whether the square is just to be seen, not experienced. Now, national flags are important things with huge significance to the nation they represent, and I would never mock how any country chooses to manage their flag. Mexico must be one of those countries where the flag must not touch the ground, so after a very formal and ceremonial arrival of some soldiers when it was time to lower the flag for the night, those soldiers then very formally and ceremonially broke formation, and formally and ceremonially dashed around like lunatics trying to catch the wildly flapping flag before it hit the ground. It was not clear whether a bonus was paid to the lucky soldier that made first contact with the descending flag. As I've said, and I'm sure you'll agree, this was all very formal and ceremonial and not in any way comedic. The square itself remained locked off even after the flagpole was secured at the end of the ceremony, but there were some other areas where various experiences were offered. I believe this is a traditional smoke ceremony. Very colourful and interesting to watch, although I didn't feel the need to participate myself. Also very close to both my hotel and the main square was the archaeological site of Templo Mayor, which was a major religious centre with the first temples having been built in the 14th century. When the old civilization died out, the stones used for the temple were recycled into other buildings, leaving no trace at all at street level. But at the start of the 20th century, excavations began and quite a lot can now be seen. You can explore some of the ruins, and some of the major finds are now presented inside a visitor's centre. It's nowhere near as impactful as the intact temple pyramids you find in other parts of Mexico, but it's still quite an impressive sight to visit. Also close-ish to the main square is the Mercado de la Merced, the largest market in the entire city. It's a maze of narrow aisles broken into a number of zones. This was the party goods zone, very handy for the clean toilets should you be in need. There was also a kitchenware zone, including some monster pans and a splendid array of gas valves. And towards the back is a food market with every vegetable you can imagine, plus quite a few you can't. It's actually pretty much a grid system in there, so it's not too hard to keep track of where you are, but getting lost in exotic markets can be fun, and it would be quite easy to do so in this massive complex. I'm not a hoarder of stuff bought from markets, but I did get the sense that bargains could be had. I'm usually a little allergic to open-top bus tours, but there were a few offered in Mexico City, and as it's a large place where attractions are somewhat spread out, I decided to sign up. And I really enjoyed it. The commentary was pretty detailed and it was a lovely day, even if there were a few points where the Mexico City power cabling strategies threatened to decapitate anyone on the top deck not paying attention. I was there on a Sunday and a Monday, which was not ideal as most of the shops close on a Sunday and almost all of the tourist attractions close on a Monday, so bear that in mind if you plan a visit. Food is everywhere in Mexico City, as you might expect. I didn't feel much of what I ate, but I ate well. This may not look that appealing, but it was absolutely delicious. So thank you, Mexico City. It's been a blast. I really enjoyed my time here, and I feel I only scratched the surface, but what I did get to see, I liked. It's a big city, there's lots to see and do. It doesn't always feel like it's a big city, it sort of works. There's traffic, but it moves. There's people, but they sort of move. It just seems to work as a large city. But as always, when I'm making these sorts of trips with the primary objective of filming flights, I've had far too little time here to really get to know the place in any detail, and I think I will be back because it's the sort of place that I enjoy spending time. But it is time to move on, and today, possibly the highlight of the entire trip, is a 10-hour flight on British Airways back up to London in their first class cabin. Yes, I get to fly in first class. Let's go! BA's first class doesn't really compete with many true first class products offered by other airlines, particularly the Middle Eastern airlines, but it was still a very enjoyable experience, as I report in this video. So we landed back into Heathrow, and it would have been possible, perhaps even sensible, for me to just head home. But who wants to be sensible, eh? Let me explain. So hello and welcome to London Heathrow's Terminal 5. Now, one of the great benefits of flying out of this terminal in first class on British Airways is that you get to access the Concorde room. That's a dedicated lounge for first class travellers and super senior status holders in the BA Executive Club, status above that which I hold. One of the disadvantages of flying into London in first class on British Airways is that there are very few outstations that offer anything comparable to the Concorde room experience. But there's a little known loophole that if you are connecting on another flight having arrived into the airport in first class, you can still use the Concorde room before your onward flight, regardless of the cabin of that onward flight. So I have done what any sensible person has done when they know they're going to be arriving into London in first class, and I've booked an onward ticket the same day. I picked Manchester because I've never been, because it wasn't far and it was pretty cheap. So a little bit later on tonight I'll be flying up to Manchester, but between now and then you've got the opportunity to join me and come and see what the Concorde room is like. A flash of the inbound boarding pass was all that was required, and I enjoyed a shower, some food, a few drinks and some cricket in the Concorde room before flying on up to Manchester. We arrived well after dark, so I'd booked the cheapest airport hotel available, which was the Ibis Budget Hotel. The clue was in the name, as it was quite a budget experience. I think some prison cells are bigger than the room I got. The property seems to have been built in the car park of the Holiday Inn, of which you got a fantastic view. The bed and shower were both good, but I guess you get what you pay for. The £70 I paid for this night was about half the price offered by some of those other properties. It's also the furthest lodgings from Terminal 3, from which BA operates, and from the railway station, but I felt a burning need to go and see Manchester, so I slogged over to the station and took the train into town. Manchester is actually quite nice, in the central downtown area at least. Plenty of shops for those footballers' wives to spend their 200 grand a week wages on, and quite a few pubs too. And there's plenty of Grigg's as well. I tried to see what the inside of a relatively massive Anglican place of worship looked like, but it was closed for a kids' event, so my ambitions were thwarted. And of course it started to rain, so I cut short my wanderings and headed back to the airport to catch my flight back to London, an experience I report on in this video. So thank you, Manchester. You were, well, Manchester. Last flight of the trip, the shortest flight of the trip, indeed the shortest flight that BA offers anywhere, which is from here down to London Heathrow. Let's go. So there you go, 4 cities in 8 days, 5 if you include Madrid, and that usual sense of slight disappointment that nobody around me realises or appreciates the exciting adventures I've just had. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Please give this video a like if you did, consider subscribing if you're new, and leave me a comment. Do you want to visit any of these places now you've seen them? Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.